My name is Mason Parker, 34 years old, and I'd built my tech company from nothing into a multi-million-dollar success. I thought surprising my parents with an $85,000 luxury Caribbean cruise for their 50th wedding anniversary would finally earn me the respect I craved. Instead, at the captain's dinner, my father Richard looked me in the eye and said, "Mason doesn't really belong in these refined circles," not knowing I paid for everything. The silence around that table cut deeper than any knife. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family underestimate your worth. Growing up in Chicago's middle-class Ravenswood neighborhood, I learned early that nothing I did would ever be good enough for my father. Richard Parker, a successful corporate attorney, had mapped out my entire life before I was born. Law school. Joining his firm, taking over when he retired, that was the only acceptable path in his eyes. My mother Catherine, a high school English teacher, loved me in her quiet way but never contradicted my father's harsh judgments. My sister Natalie, 3 years older, became the golden child by following Dad's blueprint perfectly. Straight as through school, debate team captain, Harvard Law Scholarship, and then joining Dad's firm as planned. Every achievement of hers was celebrated with expensive dinners and lavish gifts, while my different interests were dismissed as frivolous or disappointing. "Computers are toys, Mason," my father would say when I'd show him programs I'd written. "You can play with them after you've finished your real studies." By 16, I had built a small network for our high school that worked better than the official system. The principal was impressed enough to pay me a small stipend for maintaining it. When I brought home that first check, only $300, but earned doing what I loved, my father barely glanced at it. "A real job means a career, son. This is just tinkering." I still remember the night I told them I was dropping out of Northwestern after my sophomore year. I'd developed an app that was gaining serious traction and had secured seed funding from an angel investor who believed in my vision. "You're throwing your life away," my father said, his voice ice cold. "I won't support this foolishness." He didn't just mean emotionally. That night, he cut me off completely. No more tuition, no housing allowance, no safety net. My mother cried silently but packed me some food as I left. "He'll come around," she whispered, not believing it herself. For 3 years, I barely survived. My first apartment was a converted storage room above a laundromat. I ate ramen and worked 18-hour days, coding until my vision blurred. The investor's money helped, but startup costs were high, and I stretched every dollar until it screamed. The first version of my app, a security platform that simplified encryption for small businesses, failed miserably. I rebuilt it from scratch, sleeping on friends' couches after I couldn't make rent. The second version caught on, slowly at first, then exponentially. By year 4, I had 12 employees and a real office. By year 5, we had major clients and 7-figure revenue. Through it all, communication with my family remained minimal. Christmas cards from Mom, the occasional text about family health issues. Nothing from Dad. Natalie married Bradley, another attorney from Dad's firm, and they had twins. I sent expensive gifts that received brief acknowledgments. Success came faster after that first breakthrough. My company expanded into consumer security, then specialized communication tools. At 32, I sold a division of my company for enough money to make me financially independent for life, while retaining control of the core business that continued to thrive. Still, despite my wealth and professional recognition, part of me remained that rejected son, seeking approval from the father who thought I wasn't good enough. When my mother called about their upcoming 50th anniversary, mentioning how they'd always dreamed of a luxury cruise but couldn't afford it on their retirement income, I saw my opportunity. "What if I arrange everything?" I suggested. "Oh, Mason, that's too much," she said, but I could hear the hope in her voice. I spared no expense. The Crystal Serenity. 14 days through the Caribbean, the owner's suite for my parents, grand suites for Natalie, Bradley and their kids, and another for myself. Premium drink packages, exclusive excursions, specialty dining. I arranged it all, spending $85,000 to create the perfect family reconciliation. At my mother's suggestion, I kept my role as benefactor quiet initially. "Your father's proud," she explained. "Let him enjoy it first, then we'll tell him you arranged everything." Looking back, I should have recognized the red flag in her words. But I was too eager for healing to see it. I wanted to believe this grand gesture would finally bridge the gap between us, that luxury and time together would soften decades of rejection. How wrong I was. Miami's cruise terminal buzzed with excitement as we prepared to board. My parents arrived first, Dad looking distinguished with his silver hair and tailored travel clothes. Mom elegant in a breezy summer dress. Natalie, Bradley and their 10-year-old twins followed shortly after. Everyone's faces lighting up at the sight of the massive crystal Serenity towering above the dock. "This is certainly an impressive vessel," my father remarked, his attorney's vocabulary in full effect even on vacation. "Catherine, your cousin Margaret certainly delivered with this special rate." I bit my tongue. Mom had told them her cousin, who works in travel, had arranged a special anniversary deal. In reality, Margaret had only helped me choose the right cruise line and itinerary. Every dollar came from my account. Check-in moved smoothly for VIP passengers, and our group was escorted aboard with champagne in hand. The twins, Thomas and Sophia, bounced with excitement, while the adults tried to maintain sophisticated composure despite their obvious awe at the ship's opulence. "This lobby chandelier probably cost more than your first car," Bradley murmured to me with a smirk. It was the kind of subtle dig I'd grown accustomed to, reminders that despite my success, they still saw me as the family disappointment. The revelation of our accommodations caused the first stir. When the butler led us to the owner's suite for my parents, my father's eyes widened. "There must be some mistake," he said. "We couldn't possibly." "No mistake, sir," the butler replied smoothly. "The owner's suite for Mr. and Mrs. Parker, grand suites for the rest of your party. If you'll all follow me for the tour." Dad looked questioningly at Mom, who merely smiled. "Happy anniversary, Richard." As we toured the lavish accommodations, I watched my family transform. My father, usually rigid and controlling, became expansive and jovial with the staff. Natalie and Bradley inspected every luxury amenity with appraising eyes. The twins jumped on beds until a sharp look from their father stopped them. My own suite, identical to my sister's, felt strangely empty as I unpacked alone. I'd arranged everything to foster togetherness, yet already felt the familiar isolation. That evening, I joined the family for our first dinner at the main restaurant. I'd barely sat down when my father started his critique. "Mason, in settings like this, the napkin goes on your lap immediately upon seating," he instructed loudly. "And you wait for the host to lift their fork first." "Dad, I'm 34, not 14, I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "Yet you still need basic etiquette lessons," he countered. "These environments have standards." The waiter approached for drink orders. My father and Bradley launched into detailed questions about wine vintages, while Natalie discussed cocktail ingredients with practiced sophistication. "Just a sparkling water," I said when my turn came. "Still don't drink alcohol?" "How do you network in business without proper drinks?" my father asked, loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "My liver and my clients both seem to manage fine," I replied, feeling my smile stiffen. The meal continued with similar comments. My choice of entree was questioned, my conversation topics dismissed. When I mentioned a recent technology innovation, my father interrupted to ask the waiter about the sauce preparation instead. Despite this, I remained hopeful. We had 13 more days. Surely things would improve as everyone relaxed into vacation mode. The next morning, I met a couple at breakfast who would become important allies. Gabriel and Madeline Thompson, both retired professors from Boston, were seated at my table when the rest of my family opted for room service. "First cruise?" Gabriel asked kindly after we introduced ourselves. "That obvious, huh?" I laughed. "You have that look of someone trying to memorize every detail," Madeline explained. "We've done 23 cruises since retiring. This ship is particularly special." Their warmth and genuine interest in my company's work was refreshing after my family's dismissal. When they mentioned they were taking a marine biology excursion the next day, I impulsively signed up too. That decision led to meeting Zoe Sullivan, the ship's resident marine biologist who was leading the excursion. With her sun-streaked brown hair, intelligent green eyes, and infectious passion for ocean conservation, she immediately caught my attention. "Most people come for the cocktails and sunsets," she said after our group discussion about coral preservation. "It's nice to meet someone interested in what's happening beneath the surface." That comment, though about marine ecosystems, felt strangely applicable to my family's situation as well. Beneath the gleaming surface of our luxury vacation, old dynamics were already reasserting themselves. That night, as we attended the welcome gala, I made an effort with my appearance: designer suit, good watch, polished shoes. Yet within minutes of joining my family, my father found fault. "Your tie is too bold for this setting, Mason. And those shoes are clearly for business, not formal events." Meanwhile, he paraded around introducing Natalie and Bradley to other wealthy passengers, never once including me in these conversations. When one elderly gentleman asked about the rest of the family, my father gestured vaguely in my direction. "Mason's here too. He does something with computers." I had built a company valued at over $200 million, yet my father reduced it to something with computers. The pattern was set, and we were only on day 2. By the 3rd day, my family had established a routine that conveniently minimized my inclusion. Each morning, they'd meet for breakfast in the exclusive restaurant for suite guests, always choosing a time just before or after I'd mentioned being available. They'd plan their day without consulting me, then act surprised when I had, unfortunately, made other arrangements. More problematic was their casual commandeering of my suite. Natalie had decided my closet was perfect for storing the twins' extra equipment: snorkels, life vests, beach toys, while Bradley used my balcony for his morning calls to the office, claiming the view from my side was superior. "You don't mind, right? You're hardly ever here anyway," Natalie said when I found her arranging the kids' swimwear in my bathroom. I did mind, but decades of family dynamics made it hard to object. Instead, I spent more time exploring the ship alone, making friends with crew members and other passengers who seemed to value my company more than my own family did. On the 4th day, we docked at a private island. I'd prearranged a deluxe cabana for the family, complete with personal butler service and a special lunch. When I arrived at the meeting point, however, only my mother waited. "The others went ahead," she explained apologetically. "Richard thought the early tender would be less crowded." "Did you tell him I reserved a cabana for all of us?" "Well, yes, but—" She hesitated. Bradley had already arranged something through his company's travel department. I later discovered they'd used the cabana I'd paid for, simply departing without me. When I arrived at the luxurious beachfront structure, my father acted surprised. "Oh, we thought this was Bradley's arrangement," he said unconvincingly. "We would have waited if we'd known." I spent that excursion largely alone, walking the pristine beaches and eventually joining a snorkeling group led by none other than Zoe Sullivan. Away from my family's criticisms, I found myself relaxing for the first time since boarding. "You seem different today," Zoe observed as we dried off after exploring a reef. "Less tense." "Family dynamics," I admitted. "They're complicated." "Aren't they always?" she smiled. "Especially in confined spaces like cruise ships. Even people who love each other start getting on each other's nerves." What if they didn't really love each other that much to begin with? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Zoe studied me for a moment. Then I'd say someone's wasting a perfectly good vacation trying to fix something that might not be fixable. Her directness was refreshing. Over fresh coconut water. I shared more about my relationship with my father, his dismissal of my career, and my hope that this cruise might change things. Sometimes, she said carefully, we keep seeking approval from people who aren't capable of giving it. The question becomes, when do you decide to stop trying? That evening, I discovered something else troubling. While reviewing the onboard charges on my cabin's television, I noticed thousands of dollars in expenses I hadn't incurred: specialty restaurant bookings, premium wine packages, spa treatments, and shore excursions far beyond what I'd prearranged. A call to guest services confirmed my suspicion. My family had been charging everything to my account, apparently assuming the special deal my mother had mentioned covered unlimited expenses. Or perhaps they knew exactly what they were doing. My father and Bradley had visited the onboard jewelry shop, purchasing watches and a diamond bracelet. Natalie had booked multiple spa treatments and private fitness sessions. Even the twins had unlimited ice cream and arcade privileges charged directly to my account. I sat on my balcony that night, watching the moonlight on the Caribbean water, feeling a familiar ache. Nothing had changed. I was still the family resource, valued for what I could provide rather than who I was. The only difference was that I'd upgraded from rejected son to convenient bankroll. The tension within me built as I reviewed each charge, each dismissal, each subtle and not so subtle insult. Something would have to give, but I wasn't yet ready to confront them. Part of me still hoped for reconciliation, still believed that somewhere beneath my father's criticism was actual love. I needed something definitive. Something that would either heal our relationship or give me permission to stop trying. I just didn't know the decisive moment would come so soon, or so publicly. The invitation to the captain's table for dinner on the fifth night was considered a high honor aboard the Crystal Serenity, given to select passengers based on VIP status or special celebrations. It represented the pinnacle of cruise social life. When all 6 of us received gold-embossed cards requesting our presence, my mother was ecstatic. "Richard, can you believe it? The captain's table for our anniversary." My father straightened his shoulders with pride. "Well, it's appropriate. I'm sure they select guests who know proper etiquette and can maintain sophisticated conversation." What neither of them knew was that I had arranged this honor weeks in advance. Requesting the captain's table as part of our anniversary celebration package. Like everything else on this cruise, it was my gift to them. I spent extra time preparing that evening, choosing my finest suit, getting a professional shave at the ship's barber shop, even purchasing a new silk tie from the onboard boutique. If ever there was a night to impress my father, this would be it. When I met my family in the lobby bar before dinner, even Natalie raised her eyebrows. "Well, someone's dressed for success," she commented. "Almost didn't recognize you without your usual casual look." My father merely nodded, more interested in introducing himself to another couple clearly headed to the same dinner. The captain's dining room was a marvel of nautical elegance. Mahogany paneling, crystal chandeliers, silver service at each setting, fresh orchids floating in crystal bowls. Captain Anders Nielsen, a distinguished Swede with 30 years at sea, greeted each guest personally. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker, our honored anniversary couple," he said warmly, kissing my mother's hand European style, which made her blush with delight. 50 years is a remarkable achievement." "Thank you, Captain," my father replied. "Good partnerships are built on proper foundations and clear leadership." My mother shot me a look that silently communicated both apology and resignation. After 5 decades, she'd given up correcting my father's antiquated views on marriage. We were seated strategically around the oval table, my parents on either side of the captain, Natalie and Bradley next to First Officer Jensen, and me beside the hotel director and a widowed countess from somewhere in Europe. The twins had been treated to a special dinner with the youth staff elsewhere. The first hour passed pleasantly enough. The 7-course meal was exquisite, the wine pairings perfect, and the conversation cultured but not stuffy. My father was in his element, telling carefully curated anecdotes from his legal career that portrayed him as both brilliant and humble. Natalie and Bradley chimed in with supporting stories, the three of them performing a well-rehearsed family narrative that excluded me entirely. The turning point came during the palate-cleansing sorbet course, when Captain Nielsen directed his attention to me. "And Mason, I understand you're in the technology sector? Something with security software?" Before I could answer, my father interjected. "Mason got lucky with a little app a few years ago. Nothing serious like Natalie and Bradley's work, of course, but he keeps busy." The captain looked surprised at this dismissal. "Actually, Mr. Parker, I believe your son's company provides the security infrastructure for our entire fleet's communication systems. Crystal Cruises doesn't entrust passenger data to companies that are nothing serious." A moment of awkward silence followed. I hadn't mentioned my company's connection to the cruise line, but of course the captain would be aware of major corporate partnerships. "That must be some other security firm." My father recovered quickly. "Mason's operation is quite small." Rather than contradicting him directly, I simply said, "We've grown substantially in recent years. Our enterprise division handles several major cruise lines now." The captain smiled. "Well, we're certainly grateful for your expertise. Cybersecurity on ships is increasingly crucial." The conversation might have moved on harmlessly from there, had the champagne toast not followed immediately after. Captain Nielsen stood, raising his glass first to my parents' anniversary, then offering a secondary toast to the distinguished guests at his table. "To successful children who make their parents proud," he said. "The lawyers, the business leaders, the countess who manages her family's charitable foundation." My father chose this moment to lean toward the captain and say, in a voice designed to be heard by everyone present, "Though some children follow more unconventional paths than others, Mason has always marched to his own drummer. He doesn't really belong in these refined circles, but we include him in family events anyway." The silence that followed was absolute. The captain's glass remained suspended mid-air. The countess beside me drew a sharp breath. Even Natalie and Bradley looked uncomfortable. "Dad," Natalie finally said quietly, "that's not appropriate." But my father, perhaps emboldened by premium wines or simply revealing his true feelings, continued, "I'm merely stating facts. Mason chose to abandon a proper education for his computer games. We've always supported his choices, even when they've been disappointing. The crushing weight of public humiliation, layered atop decades of similar private moments, proved too much." I placed my napkin beside my plate, stood quietly, and addressed the captain. "Please excuse me. I'm not feeling well." I walked out with as much dignity as I could muster, ignoring my mother's soft call of my name. I headed straight for the upper deck, needing air and space away from the suffocating presence of my family's disdain. Standing at the railing, watching the black Caribbean night slip past, I felt something break inside me, not in a destructive way, but as though a chain had finally snapped, releasing me from a lifetime of seeking approval I would never receive. "Mind if I join you?" Zoe stood a few feet away, her work uniform exchanged for an off-duty sundress. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Ship's not that big when you know the likely hiding spots," she replied, moving to stand beside me at the railing. "Plus, word travels fast among crew when there's drama at the captain's table." I winced. "Great. I'm ship gossip now." "Actually, your father is the gossip. You're the sympathetic character." She paused. "Want to talk about it?" Something about her direct, non-judgmental approach broke through my defenses. The whole story poured out, not just tonight's humiliation but the lifetime of rejection leading up to it, the success achieved despite my father's predictions of failure, and the final irony. "The funniest part?" He has no idea I paid $85,000 for this entire cruise. Every suite, every excursion, every specialty dining reservation, all on my supposedly unsuccessful company's dime. Zoe's eyes widened. The whole family cruise was your gift. And they don't know? My mother knows. She suggested keeping it quiet because Dad's proud. I thought eventually they'd appreciate the gesture. But instead they're charging thousands in extras to my account while treating me like an embarrassing relative they're forced to tolerate. Mason, Zoe said firmly, turning to face me directly. Why are you letting them treat you this way? You're successful, intelligent, and from what I've seen, a genuinely good person. Why keep seeking approval from people who clearly don't value you? Her question hit me with the force of revelation. Why indeed? What was I trying to prove, and to whom? Would my father's approval, even if I somehow earned it, fill the emptiness his rejection had created? I don't know, I admitted. Habit, I guess. The need to finally hear him say he was wrong about me. And if he never does? She challenged gently. I looked out at the vast darkness beyond the ship's lights, feeling something shift inside me. Then maybe it's time I stopped waiting and started living on my terms instead. Zoe smiled. Now that sounds like a vacation worth having. We talked for hours that night, the ship's gentle movement beneath us matching the subtle shifting of my perspective. By the time we parted, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Not out of vengeance or spite, but as an act of self-respect that was long overdue. I slept better that night than I had since boarding the ship, waking with clarity and purpose. For years, I'd been the family doormat, enduring criticism while financially supporting the very people who dismissed me. That pattern would end today. The ship was docking in St. Thomas, where my family had a full day of activities planned, shopping excursions for the women, golf for my father and Bradley, a marine adventure camp for the twins. All charged to my account, of course. Instead of joining them for breakfast, I requested a private meeting with cruise director Michael Bedford in his office. Michael was the ship's highest-ranking hospitality officer, responsible for ensuring VIP guests remained satisfied. "Mr. Parker, what can I do for you this morning?" he asked as I entered his tastefully appointed office. "I'd like to discuss some adjustments to my family's arrangements," I explained. "And please call me Mason. For the next hour." I outlined the situation and my proposed changes. To his credit, Michael remained professionally neutral, though I caught flickers of sympathy as I described the captain's dinner incident, which he'd already heard about through staff channels. "All entirely possible, Mason," he confirmed after reviewing my requests. "Since you're the financially responsible party for all reservations and accommodations, you have full authority to make these changes. I'll have everything arranged by this evening." "I appreciate your discretion," I said, standing to shake his hand. "Of course. And may I say, your security company's systems have made our jobs much easier. The facial recognition for passenger embarkation is particularly impressive." I thanked him for the professional acknowledgement and left to make my next arrangements. First, a call to my executive assistant back in Chicago. Despite the early hour there, Diane answered immediately. "I need a few special arrangements," I explained, outlining what I required. "As always." She took everything in stride. "Consider it done. The documentation will be emailed within the hour, and I'll coordinate with the ship's business center for printing. Anything else?" "Yes," I said after a moment's thought. "Contact PR about the Children's Technology Access charity event next month. I'd like to double our donation and sponsor 10 additional schools." "That's very generous," Diane noted. "Any particular reason?" "Let's just say I'm redirecting funds that would have been wasted elsewhere." Next, I visited the ship's front desk to request a complete record of all charges to my account since embarkation. The list was even longer than I'd anticipated: spa treatments, premium shore excursions, specialty dining, boutique purchases, and bar tabs that suggested my father and Bradley were working their way through every premium scotch on board. With paperwork in hand, I sought out Gabriel and Madeline, finding them enjoying coffee on the promenade deck. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. "Mason! We missed you at the marine biology lecture this morning," Madeline said warmly. I explained my situation in broad strokes, not wanting to burden them with every detail but needing allies for the evening ahead. "So you've been financing this entire family celebration while they treat you poorly?" Gabriel clarified, his academic mind cutting straight to the heart of the issue. "That about sums it up," I confirmed. "And you're finally going to confront them?" Madeline asked. "Not confront exactly. Just rebalance the situation." They exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret before Gabriel spoke. "We'd be honored to support you. Just tell us when and where." My last stop was finding Zoe, who was leading an afternoon workshop on coral conservation. I waited until her participants dispersed before approaching. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, concern evident in her eyes. "Better. Clearer," I replied. "I've made some decisions." I outlined my plan, watching her expression shift from concern to surprise to something like admiration. "That's actually really healthy," she said finally. "Not vindictive, just establishing boundaries." "Will you be there?" I asked, surprised by how much her answer mattered to me. "Wouldn't miss it," she promised with a smile that made the whole difficult day ahead seem worthwhile. While my family enjoyed their day in St. Thomas, I carefully avoided them, having the concierge deliver a note that I had business matters to attend to on board. In reality, I was finalizing every detail of the evening ahead, ensuring there would be no room for manipulation or misunderstanding. By 6 o'clock, everything was in place. I changed into my best suit, reviewed my talking points one final time, and headed to the Azure Lounge where I'd arranged for a private family meeting before dinner. The stage was set. After a lifetime of seeking approval that never came, I was finally ready to stand in my own authority. Not with anger or revenge, but with the quiet dignity my success had earned. As I rode the elevator down to Deck 7, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened next would change our family dynamic forever, either healing it on new terms or giving me permission to finally stop trying. Either way, I would no longer be the person my father had decided I was. It was time to show him, and perhaps more importantly, myself, exactly who Mason Parker had become. The Azure Lounge was normally a bustling night spot, but at my request, cruise director Michael had reserved it exclusively for our family between 6 and 7 p.m., before the evening crowd arrived. The space had been transformed with a central seating area of plush armchairs arranged in a semicircle, a small table with water and wine, and subtle lighting that created an atmosphere both intimate and formal. I arrived first, nodding to the staff who discreetly positioned themselves near the service entrance. My heartbeat accelerated when I heard familiar voices approaching, my father's authoritative tone rising above the others as they entered. "Mason, what's this about?" my father demanded immediately. "We had reservations at the steakhouse. Those have been moved to later," I replied calmly. "Please, everyone take a seat. This won't take long." Something in my tone must have registered as different because, for once, my father complied without argument. My mother looked anxious, Natalie suspicious, and Bradley bored. The twins had been left at the kids' club, which was perfect for what needed to be said. Once everyone was seated, the door opened again to admit cruise director Michael, followed by Gabriel, Madeline, and Zoe. My father's eyebrows rose at these unexpected additions. "Who are these people? I thought this was a family meeting." "It is," I replied. "But since this concerns the cruise arrangements, Mr. Bedford needs to be present. Gabriel and Madeline are friends who've kindly agreed to witness our discussion. And Zoe is here at my personal invitation." Before my father could object further, Michael stepped forward. "Good evening, Parker family. I'm Michael Bedford. Cruise Director for the Crystal Serenity. First, let me acknowledge what an honor it is to have you celebrating your 50th anniversary with us, Mr. and Mrs. Parker. My mother smiled nervously while my father nodded with his usual sense of entitlement. I'm here because there have been some adjustments to your sailing arrangements that I wanted to personally explain, Michael continued smoothly. But first, I believe Mason has something he'd like to share with you. All eyes turned to me. For a moment, I flashed back to countless family dinners where my achievements were dismissed. School events my father was too busy to attend, graduation ceremonies where his handshake felt more like a business transaction than paternal pride. All those moments crystallized into this one, where I would finally speak my truth. 5 months ago, when Mom mentioned your anniversary dream of taking a cruise, I decided to make it happen. I began, my voice steady. Not the basic cruise package you might have expected, but the absolute best experience possible. The owner's suite for you both. Grand suites for Natalie's family and myself. Premium drink packages. Exclusive shore excursions. Special anniversary celebrations. I paused, noting the confusion on my father's face. What are you talking about? Catherine's cousin arranged a special rate through her travel connections. There is no special rate, Dad. There's only me, paying for everything. I gestured to Michael, who handed each family member a leather portfolio embossed with the Crystal Cruises logo. Inside each was a complete breakdown of costs, $85,000 in total, with my name listed as the financially responsible party. That's impossible, my father said, but with less conviction. You couldn't afford. I could and I did, I interrupted gently. My little app company currently employs 327 people across 4 countries. Our enterprise security division, which provides services to Crystal Cruises among many others, generated $89 million in revenue last year alone. The silence that followed was profound. My father stared at the documentation, his face cycling through disbelief, confusion, and something that might have been the beginning of reassessment. But, my mother began. Why didn't you tell them from the beginning? I only suggested keeping it quiet until Dad adjusted to the idea of being indebted to his disappointment of a son. I finished for her. I agreed because I still hoped this trip might finally bridge the gap between us. That after all these years, I might finally earn the respect freely given to Natalie simply for following the path he chose for her. Natalie shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Mason, that's not fair. Isn't it? I asked. When was the last time Dad introduced you as someone who got lucky in your career? When did he ever tell strangers you don't belong in professional settings? Last night was unfortunate. My father interjected, his lawyer's instincts kicking in for damage control. Perhaps I had too much wine. If you felt insulted, this isn't about last night, I said firmly. Last night was simply the culmination of a lifetime pattern. And it might have continued indefinitely except for one thing. I produced another set of documents, the complete record of additional charges my family had made to my account. Since boarding, you've charged over $12,000 in extras to my account. Premium excursions I didn't authorize. Jewelry purchases. Spa treatments. Specialty dining. All while treating me as an afterthought at best and an embarrassment at worst. Bradley finally spoke up. Now wait a minute. We were told everything was covered under the special arrangement. Everything I specifically arranged was covered. I clarified. The accommodations. The basic drink packages. Certain excursions. But the Cartier watch you purchased yesterday? The private island cabana you claim to have arranged through your firm? The vintage Macallan you and Dad have been enjoying each night? All charged to my account without even the courtesy of asking. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. If this is about money. It's not about money, I said, my voice remaining calm. It's about respect. Something I've never received from you, regardless of my accomplishments. Michael cleared his throat. Perhaps this would be a good time to explain the adjustments to your sailing arrangements. My family turned to him, seeming almost relieved to have someone else to focus on. Effective immediately, there have been some changes authorized by Mason as the financially responsible party for your booking. Michael explained professionally. Mr. and Mrs. Parker, you'll retain the owner's suite for the duration of the cruise, as it was booked specifically for your anniversary. My mother visibly relaxed until Michael continued. However, Natalie and Bradley, along with the children, will be relocated from your grand suite to standard balcony staterooms on deck 8. All premium drink packages have been cancelled except for the one attached to the owner's suite. All unauthorized charges have been transferred to individual accounts opened in each of your names, requiring separate settlement. What? Bradley exploded. You can't just. Additionally, Michael continued smoothly, all specialty dining reservations have been cancelled, though you're welcome to rebook at your own expense if space is available. The premium shore excursions scheduled for the remaining ports have also been cancelled, though standard excursions may still have availability. My father found his voice. This is ridiculous. You can't possibly have the authority to. Actually, sir, Mason has full authority as the financially responsible party who booked and paid for the entire group. Michael explained. From a legal standpoint, you've been enjoying his hospitality, which he has the right to modify. The cruise director nodded to me and stepped back. The moment felt surreal. My father, the imposing figure who had shaped so much of my self-doubt, suddenly looking small and uncertain. Why are you doing this? Natalie asked, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. I'm not doing it to punish you, I said honestly. I'm doing it because continuing as we were would be unhealthy for all of us. You'll still enjoy a wonderful cruise, just not at my expense. Financially or emotionally. And where will you be staying, if Natalie's taking your suite? My mother asked quietly. I've arranged different accommodations, I replied, not elaborating that Michael had upgraded me to the remaining grand suite on the ship as a courtesy to a valued corporate partner. So this is it? You're abandoning your family over a few misunderstandings? My father asked, attempting to regain control of the situation. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference. I stood, signaling that the discussion was concluding. The new key cards for your reassigned accommodations are in the portfolios. Your belongings are being transferred as we speak. And if we refuse? My father challenged. Then you'd be violating the terms of passage you signed upon boarding. And the ship's security would become involved. Michael said matter-of-factly. But I'm sure that won't be necessary. My father's face showed a fleeting expression I'd rarely seen, something close to respect, not for me, but for the authority Michael represented. It was revealing how quickly he deferred to power when it came from someone other than his son. Mason, my mother said tearfully, please reconsider. We can work this out as a family. For a moment I hesitated. Her pain was genuine, and part of me still longed for reconciliation. But another part, the healthier part, knew this boundary was long overdue. We can still see each other during the cruise, I said gently. I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm just no longer financing behaviors that devalue me. My father stood abruptly. Come, Catherine. We don't need to beg. Actually, Richard, my mother said with unexpected firmness, I think we do need to listen. Mason has every right to feel as he does. This unprecedented contradiction seemed to shock my father more than anything else that had happened. He stared at her as if seeing a stranger. I'd like to speak with our son alone. She continued. You and the others go on ahead. For a tense moment, I thought he might refuse. Then, with a curt nod, he gestured for Natalie and Bradley to follow him out. Michael diplomatically offered to escort them to their new accommodations, leaving me with my mother, Zoe, and the Thompsons. Would you like us to step outside as well? Gabriel asked kindly. No. Please stay, I replied, finding strength in their supportive presence. My mother waited until the door closed behind the others before speaking. I've failed you, she said simply. All these years. I've enabled your father's treatment of you by staying silent. Mom, please let me finish. I was so afraid of causing conflict that I let him dismiss your dreams, your accomplishments, your worth. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but really, I was just being a coward. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and despite everything, my heart ached for her. I'm so proud of you, Mason. Not just for your success, but for standing up for yourself in a way I never had the courage to do. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope you'll give me the chance to be the mother you deserved all along. Her words, so unexpected and so desperately longed for, broke something open inside me. Without conscious decision, I found myself embracing her. I'd like that, I said simply. When we separated, I introduced her properly to Zoe and the Thompsons. As they chatted, I saw my mother in a new light, not just as an extension of my father, but as an individual who might be finding her own voice after 50 years of marriage. Perhaps this confrontation would lead to healing after all, though not in the way I'd originally imagined. Not through my father's approval, but through my own self-respect and the connections with people who valued me for exactly who I was. As we prepared to leave the lounge, Zoe touched my arm lightly. For what it's worth, she said quietly, that was one of the most emotionally mature confrontations I've ever witnessed. As opposed to either doormat or vengeful tactics. She smiled. You found the healthy middle ground. Looking around at these people who had become my unexpected support system, I realized something important. I'd spent so long seeking a place in my father's world that I'd nearly missed the opportunity to create my own, one where respect was given freely, not as a prize to be earned through endless striving. That revelation alone was worth every penny of the $85,000 I'd spent on this cruise. The remainder of the cruise unfolded in ways I never could have predicted. My relocation to a grand suite on Deck 11, ironically larger than my original accommodation, provided both literal and figurative distance from the family dynamics that had defined me for so long. The first morning after the confrontation, I awoke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and something else equally warming, freedom from expectation. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had no agenda centered around earning my father's approval. I ordered breakfast on my spacious balcony and watched dolphins playing in the ship's wake, feeling present in a way that had previously eluded me. When Zoe called to invite me to join a small group snorkeling expedition at our next port, I accepted without checking whether my family had other plans. You seem different, Gabriel observed when I met him and Madeline for coffee later that day. More relaxed? I feel different, I admitted. Like I've put down a heavy suitcase I didn't realize I'd been carrying. My mother, true to her word, made independent efforts to connect. She appeared at my door that afternoon, tentative but determined. I thought you might want to join me for the art auction, she suggested. You always had a good eye for painting, even as a boy. We spent 2 hours admiring maritime art and modern abstracts, conversing more openly than we had in years. She shared stories of her own abandoned dreams of teaching literature at the university level, sacrificed to support my father's career and raise children. I don't regret the choices I made, she clarified, but I do regret not encouraging you more forcefully to make different ones than I did. It worked out in the end, I assured her. Maybe not the way anyone expected, but I'm happy with where I landed. Are you? She asked with genuine interest. Truly happy? The question gave me pause. Professional success, financial security, freedom to pursue my interests, yes, I had achieved all these. But personal fulfillment, deep connections, the comfort of being fully known and accepted? Those had been scarcer commodities in my life. I'm getting there, I answered honestly. This trip has been clarifying in unexpected ways. My father's response to the new arrangements was predictably complex. When we encountered each other in an elevator the next day, the confined space amplified the awkwardness between us. "Your mother says you've taken up snorkeling," he offered stiffly, clearly at a loss for more substantial conversation. "Among other things," I replied, not elaborating. He examined his reflection in the polished elevator doors. "The standard accommodations are adequate, though certainly not what we expected." I recognized this as the closest thing to vulnerability he could manage, an oblique acknowledgement that his circumstances had changed due to my actions. "I'm glad they're comfortable," I said simply. When the doors opened at his floor, he hesitated. "The dinner at the captain's table," perhaps I spoke hastily. "Coming from my father." This ambiguous statement represented a monumental concession. Not quite an apology, but an unprecedented admission that he might have been wrong. "Perhaps," I agreed, neither accepting nor rejecting this partial olive branch. "Enjoy your day, Dad." The elevator doors closed on his slightly bewildered expression. For a man accustomed to controlling every interaction, my newfound equanimity was clearly unsettling. Natalie sought me out next, finding me reading in a quiet corner of the library. "The twins miss you," she said without preamble. "They keep asking why Uncle Mason doesn't come to breakfast anymore." "I'm happy to see them any time," I replied. "Just let me know when works for you." She fidgeted with her wedding ring. "Bradley's furious about the charges. He had to call his office and have them wire money to cover everything." I imagine that was uncomfortable. I acknowledged without offering sympathy. Was it really necessary? The public humiliation of having staff relocate us like we were being evicted. I closed my book. Was it necessary for Dad to publicly humiliate me at the captain's dinner? Or for you and Bradley to exclude me from excursions I paid for? Or to use my suite as your personal storage closet without asking? Her silence was answer enough. "I didn't do this to humiliate anyone, Natalie. I did it because healthy relationships require mutual respect, something our family has never extended to me." "You've changed," she said, a note of accusation in her voice. "I hope so," I replied sincerely. Over the next week, a new pattern emerged. My days filled with activities I genuinely enjoyed, often in the company of Zoe, Gabriel, and Madeline, or other passengers I'd befriended. Sometimes my mother joined us, gradually revealing a personality distinct from the meek partner to my father I'd always known. My relationship with Zoe deepened into something beyond friendship. Our conversations ranged from marine conservation to childhood memories, professional challenges to favorite books. When she wasn't working, we explored ports together, hiked to waterfalls in St. Lucia, and discovered hidden beaches in Antigua. "What happens when the cruise ends?" she asked one evening as we watched the sunset from my balcony. "I live in Chicago, you're based in Miami between sailings," I mused. "That's not an insurmountable distance." "So you're thinking beyond the cruise?" Her smile made my heart race in ways no business success ever had. "I'm definitely thinking beyond the cruise," I confirmed, taking her hand. The final formal night of the sailing arrived faster than seemed possible. I'd arranged a special dinner in one of the specialty restaurants for Zoe, the Thompsons, and myself, a celebration of new connections that had become surprisingly important. We were midway through our main course when my father appeared at our table, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "May I speak with you for a moment, Mason?" I excused myself and followed him to a quiet corner near the restaurant's entrance. "Your mother and I would like to host a family breakfast tomorrow," he said. "The last day before disembarkation. It would mean a great deal to her." I noticed he framed it as my mother's wish rather than his own, another small but significant shift. "I'll be there," I promised. "What time?" 9 o'clock, in the main dining room. He hesitated, then added, "Thank you for continuing to include your mother in your activities. She's enjoyed getting to know your friends." The slight pause before Friends suggested he noticed the nature of my relationship with Zoe but was making an effort not to comment judgmentally. Progress, however small. As he turned to leave, I found myself saying, "You're welcome to join us now if you'd like. We're celebrating our last night on board." Surprise flickered across his face, followed by something that might have been regret. "Another time, perhaps. Your mother is waiting." It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. Like so much about this cruise, it existed in a new middle ground we were all learning to navigate. The family breakfast the next morning proved surprisingly pleasant. The twins regaled me with stories of their adventures in the kids' club, Natalie made genuine efforts at conversation, and Bradley at least maintained civil politeness. My father, while not effusive, refrained from any critical comments. As we finished our meal, my mother raised her coffee cup. "To family," she said simply. Everyone joined the toast, though I suspected each of us defined family rather differently in that moment. For me, it had expanded beyond blood relations to include the authentic connections I'd formed during this journey. Later, as the ship approached Miami and passengers prepared for disembarkation, I stood on my balcony reflecting on the past 2 weeks. What had begun as an attempt to buy my father's approval had transformed into something far more valuable: the recognition that his approval had never been the prize I truly needed. The real achievement was finding my own worth, independent of his assessment. Not in the money I'd spent or the business I'd built, but in the person I'd become despite, or perhaps because of, the challenges his rejection had created. A knock at my door revealed Zoe, dressed in civilian clothes rather than her staff uniform. "All packed?" she asked, entering with the easy familiarity we'd developed. "Just about. My flight's not until tomorrow, though. I thought I might explore Miami a bit first." "What a coincidence." She smiled. "I have 3 days before my next sailing, and I know some excellent spots in Miami. As we finalize plans to extend our time together." I realized how much had changed since boarding this ship. I had arrived seeking validation from my past and departed having discovered possibilities for my future instead. 6 months later, much has changed. Zoe and I maintain a long-distance relationship that grows stronger with each visit. My mother calls weekly, our conversations deeper and more honest than ever before. Natalie and I have established a cautious truce, primarily centered around my genuine affection for her children. My father remains my father, proud, somewhat rigid, slow to change, but our interactions now carry a mutual acknowledgement that we are separate individuals with different paths. He even visited my company headquarters during a business trip to Chicago, though he tried to frame it as just stopping by, rather than the deliberate effort I recognized it to be. The cruise that was meant to be a peace offering became instead a boundary-setting exercise that, paradoxically, opened the possibility for healthier relationships with my family. Not through grand gestures or excessive generosity, but through the simple, powerful act of valuing myself enough to require respect from others. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family dynamics, remember that establishing boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic connections. You don't need to buy expensive cruises or make dramatic statements. Sometimes, the quietest no can be the most transformative act of self-respect. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who didn't value your achievements? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life journeys of growth and self-discovery. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth isn't determined by anyone else's assessment of you. It's already there, waiting for you to recognize it.